Let's build Spawn as a playable character in Dungeons & Dragons. You have to start with the species, and that part's a little tricky. You could go with a tiefling, because technically when he is reborn as Spawn, he becomes a Hell Spawn, but he's also reborn as Spawn, so a reborn could also work. But his general origins come from being a human, and we get a few more benefits from going with a human, so that's what we're going to do, by starting with the species of human. This gives us 1 skill proficiency right off the bat, and because of your history as being more of a mercenary assassin type thing, we're going to go with stealth. This is also helpful for later when Spawn has the ability to camouflage himself. You get the feature resourceful, so you get a heroic inspiration once per long rest by default, and you get an origin feat. So we're just going to grab tough. It's pretty simple. It just gives you an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. When it comes to a background, we're going to choose mercenary veteran, because that applies most closely to the general background before you became Spawn in the first place, because every King of Hell needs to get their start somewhere. Becoming a mercenary veteran gives you skill proficiencies in athletics and persuasion. Then when it comes to the ability scores, we're going to have a point spread that looks like this. It's probably pretty obvious which way we're going to go with this, with these points, but we'll find ways to build on it. And if you want an easier way to follow along, I have character sheets available for all of my builds in the Patreon link down below, which also helps support this channel just like all of these people. But diving into the actual class of the character, it's kind of obvious we gotta go with a warlock. You literally go to hell and make a deal to come back and just be the epic intensity of Spawn. When you become a warlock, you get proficiency in 2 skills, so we're going to grab intimidation and arcana, just because it's kind of nice to be able to understand the general hellish magic that you have access to. You also get to choose 1 eldritch invocation at this first level of being a warlock, and this got the update in 2024, so now you can choose your Pact boon, and we're going to choose Pact of the Blade. It's pretty often that Spawn uses crazy intense weapons, like he uses a battle axe or a sword when he's medieval Spawn. He always has those chains that he can use. All of it, it's basically different types of weapons. And when you choose Pact of the Blade, you can make a pact with a different type of weapon. If you want it to be those chains, use a whip. If you want it to be the sword or the battle axe, go for that instead. And when you attack with this weapon, it's automatically magical, and it can use your charisma modifier for the attack and damage rolls, because that is the main ability modifier for a warlock. The last thing you get at first level of warlock is some pact magic, which is a special type of magic that only warlocks get access to. It's different because you only get a couple spell slots, but those spell slots recharge on a short rest. Also, those spell slots upgrade as you level up in warlock, going to higher and higher levels, and you can only cast them at their max level. We'll go through all the cantrips and spells in one solid chunk, so that way I can go ahead and put it in the time codes below so it's a little easier to access. But just adding on to that magic at level 2 of warlock, you get some magical cunning, so you can regain half of your maximum spell slots because you have so few, as just a 1 minute restoration thing that you can activate. Also at this level, you get to choose 2 more eldritch invocations. So because Spawn does have the ability to blast out with sort of necrotic, damaging whatever, or the green flames and stuff, we're going to grab Agonizing Blast, and we're going to attach it to the cantrip Eldritch Blast. And we'll make sure to cover that again when we cover the spells, but Agonizing Blast allows you to add your charisma modifier to the damage of a cantrip. And then when you choose this invocation, you have to choose what cantrip that will apply to. And it's usually best to choose Eldritch Blast with this, because as you level up, Eldritch Blast will shoot out more and more beams, and each beam can be boosted by your charisma modifier, making it one of the best damaging cantrips in the game. The other Eldritch invocation we're going to grab is Armor of Shadows. You kind of have a very famous hovering thing that you kind of wrap around your body. You know, the whole black and white costume thing. It's kind of iconic. So we're going to go ahead and replicate this with our Armor of Shadows, which allows you to cast Mage Armor for free without spending a spell slot, which means that your armor class is now 13 plus your dexterity modifier all the time. Then at 3rd level of Warlock, you get to choose a Warlock subclass. And you kind of become the King of Hell, and you're making a deal with more devil-type creatures. So because of this, we're obviously going to go with a Fiend Warlock subclass. By choosing a Fiend Patron, we get Dark One's Blessing. So when you reduce an enemy to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. And you even gain this benefit if somebody else reduces a creature to 0 hit points within 10 feet of you, meaning that you just became a lot more resilient and a lot more tanky. Having a Fiend for your patron as a Warlock also gives you a whole bunch of spells that are all revolving around basically Hellfire. Then at 4th level of Warlock, you get an ability score improvement, so we're just going to go ahead and boost up your Charisma by 2 points, because that's what Warlocks need most. And then at 5th level of Warlock, you get 2 more Eldritch Invocations. So because we're slightly more focused on melee at this point with the axes or swords or chains or whatever, we're going to grab a Thirsting Blade, allowing you to have an extra attack on your turn, and Eldritch Smite. So when you hit somebody with an attack that's from your Pact of the Blade weapon, you can expend a spell slot, which automatically deals 1d8 extra force damage, plus another 1d8 for every level of the spell slot that you expended for it. So once you are able to get 5th level spells, that means you're adding an extra 6d8 for 1 for the base and 5 for the level of spell slot. And if the target you're hitting is huge or smaller, you knock it prone. You can only use this feature once per turn though. At 6th level of Warlock, you get another feature from the Fiend patron called Dark One's Own Luck. So you can call upon the hells themselves to alter your fate. So when you make an ability check or a saving throw, which is very important, you can use this feature to add a 1d10 to your roll. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your Charisma modifier. You regain all uses on a long rest, but you can only use this once on any particular ability check or saving throw. So you can't just keep redoing it over and over again. At 7th level of Warlock, you get another Eldritch Invocation, and Spawn has a pretty iconic cape that is all sorts of crazy, especially with how it's illustrated, animated, or done in CG for the Spawn movie. So I want to make sure I emphasize that concept a little bit with the Eldritch Invocation Ascendant Step, which allows you to cast Levitate at will without expending a spell slot. So that cape just becomes a little more useful, I guess. At 8th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement, so we'll go ahead and boost up that Charisma again. At 9th level of Warlock, you get a feature called Contact Patron. So you always have the spell Contact Other Plane prepared, and once per long rest, you can cast it without expending a spell slot to contact your patron. Also at 9th level, you get another Eldritch Invocation. So we're gonna grab Life Drinker. So once per turn, when you hit a creature with your Pact weapon, you can deal an extra 1d6 necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage. And when you do so, you can expend one of your hit dice, which are just a number of dice that you have access to. You have 1 per level. And when you do that, you regain a number of hit points equal to whatever you rolled plus your Constitution modifier. Then at 10th level of Warlock, you get another feature from your Fiend patron called Fiendish Resilience. So you can choose 1 damage type and just have permanent resistance to it. The only requirement is that that damage type can't be force, but you can change this damage type every short or long rest. However, I would probably default to fire for right now, considering your general background and already dealing with plenty of fire in the past. Then at this point, you've already got access to 5th level spell slots for your basic Warlock spell slots. But at level 11, you get a Mystic Arcanum. And these are special higher level spell slots that you have access to, but they don't recharge on short rests. They can only be used once per day. So as the King of Hell, you might want to summon some backup on occasion, so we're going to grab the spell Summon Fiend. Then at 12th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and boost up your Dexterity by 2 more points, mostly just to help out your armor class, and you get another Eldritch Invocation. So we'll go ahead and grab Devouring Blade. So now you can attack 3 times per action. This does require you to already have Thirsting Blade as one of your Eldritch Invocations though. At 13th level of Warlock, you get another Mystic Arcanum. This time it's a 7th level spell, and just to really lock your enemies in place, we'll grab Force Cage. Really just locks enemies down pretty heavily. At 14th level of Warlock, you get another feature from your Fiend patron, and frankly this is the one that I love the most for this patron because it's called Hurl Through Hell. So once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll of any kind, you can instantly send them down to hell. The target must succeed on a Charisma saving throw, which I will note is probably one of the weaker saving throws for a lot of enemies that you would be going up against in D&D, and if they fail, the target disappears and gets sent through a complete nightmare landscape. The target will take 8d10 psychic damage in the process, but only if it's not a fiend specifically, and it also winds up having the incapacitated condition until the end of your next turn, at which point it returns to the space it was teleported away from, or the nearest unoccupied space. You can only use this feature once per long rest unless you use one of your very precious spell slots to be able to activate it again. Then at 15th level of Warlock, you get another Eldritch Invocation, and when Spawn really needs to, he can make himself look like other people, so I'm going to grab the Invocation Mask of Many Faces. This is actually something that can be pretty useful early on in being a Warlock, and it is completely broken entire dungeons for me as a dungeon master, so it is not something you want to sleep on. In fact, I would highly recommend taking it earlier, because it allows you to cast Disguise Self on yourself at will, without expending any sort of spell slot. I had a player that used this to make themselves look like a goblin and get through the entire first dungeon I sent them through, managing to group them all together and really blast the hell out of them in the most effective way possible, completely neutralizing an entire floor. Also at 15th level of Warlock, you get another Mystic Arcanum. This time it's an 8th level spell. And with all of the melee attacks you're doing, a great spell to have is Power Word Stun. It allows you to overwhelm the mind of a creature, and Spawn is able to do some general illusion stuff, so I think this kind of fits pretty well with the character as long as you think about it right. And if the target happens to have 150 hit points or fewer, they automatically succumb to this spell, making the target completely stunned, and any stunned creature, you have advantage on melee attacks against them, and considering you can do 3 melee attacks, that's pretty damn strong. But even if they have more than 150 hit points, their speed is still reduced to 0 until the end of your next turn. But if they do fail, they're stuck in the stunned condition until they succeed a Constitution saving throw starting on the next turn, and it can only do it at the end of each of its turns, meaning that it could be stunned for a very, very long time. At 16th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and boost up your dexterity by 2 more points, because again, it helps your armor class. At 17th level of Warlock, you get another Mystic Arcanum. This time, it's of 9th level, and Spawn kind of has the ability of foresight in the comics. Frankly, he's got a ton of abilities overall. It just depends on which iteration and at what point in the comics, so I'm just trying to cover as much as I can. I'm not going to be able to cover all of it, but foresight is a very specific spell in D&D, so it's very easy to translate that. The 9th level spell Foresight is awesome because it lasts an entire 8 hours without concentration, and it gives you advantage on everything and gives everybody disadvantage on anything they're trying to do against you, which is generally a pretty good thing to have considering it's a game all about rolling dice. Then at 18th level of Warlock, you get 1 more Eldritch Invocation, and since you deal with so many illusions and you want to see through the craziness that the Violator tries to put in your vision and stuff, we're going to grab Witch Sight, which gives you true sight, allowing you to see through illusions and all sorts of crazy stuff for up to 30 feet. Frankly, if you don't have the ability to see through illusions at very high levels, you're putting yourself in some pretty intense risks at times. Then at 19th level of Warlock, you get an Epic Boon, which does allow us to boost 1 ability score by 1 point, but nothing is actually going to get benefited since we already have even scores and maxed out important scores. But more importantly, I want to make sure that we can recover health a little better, so we're going to take the Epic Boon of Recovery. This gives us the feature Last Stand. So if you're reduced to 0 hit points, you can then get dropped to 1 hit point instead, and you immediately regain half of your total hit points on top of that. You can only use this benefit once per long rest, but it essentially gives you 50% more HP, which is a generally pretty powerful thing to have. And it also gives you the feature Recover Vitality. So you have a pool of 10 D10s, and as a bonus action, you can use any number of those D10s, rolling them and regaining the total in hit points. You regain all of your expended dice on a long rest. Then finally at 20th level of Warlock, you get Eldritch Master. So when you use your Magical Cunning to regain some of your spell slots, now instead of recovering half, it recovers all of them. But now that we covered the core of the build, it's time to go through those spells. When it comes to cantrips, we gotta have Eldritch Blast because we need some blastiness. In general, you can actually treat this as your chains if you want to, because it is a bit more range than a normal whip would have. But he does also hurl hell flames and all sorts of like necrotic flaming whatever. In general, there's a lot of ways you can play this role-playing wise. Grab Mage Hand for a bit more utility, Sword Burst to just hit everything around you, whether you want that to be your cape swiping around or your chains just going crazy in an area of effect around you. And finally, you're letting people know if they're impending doomed and probably going to hell. So grab Toll the Dead. It is a awesome cantrip that I absolutely love. It deals a d8 necrotic damage if they haven't been damaged yet, but it deals a d12 of necrotic damage per level of this cantrip, because cantrips level up as you level up in your overall build, and it just lets them know that they're going to be going down soon. When it comes to first level spells, we need some general Hellish stuff with Burning Hands, Hellish Rebuke to just surround yourself in Hellflame, and Witch Bolt. Mostly just because Witch Bolt is really good and it kind of got a massive upgrade for 2024. It used to kind of suck, but if you think about reaching out your chain to wrap around somebody and just keep squeezing them, that's how you can play out this Witch Bolt, because it does a chunk of damage right when you hit them initially, and that levels up along with the spell slot. But as long as you maintain concentration on it, you can just default do damage against whatever creature, whether you hit them or not with the initial attack, and just keep squeezing them and crushing them and destroying them, but it just happens to be with lightning damage. And you can do that with every bonus action while you're concentrating. As far as second level stuff, we'll grab Hold Person because you're doing a lot of melee attacks, and somebody that's under the effect of Hold Person means that you're going to crit against them if it's a melee attack. We'll also grab a bit more Hellfire stuff with Scorching Ray, blasting out a bunch of fiery just destruction. And speaking of fiery destruction, when it comes to third level spells, we gotta grab Fireball. It's just a big blast of fire, and just think of it as you blasting them with Hellfire. Then also make sure you can utilize your cape a little more with the spell Fly, just so you can fly. Suck more of the life out of people with Vampiric Touch, or boost up your melee attacks with Spirit Shroud, which boosts up the damage of every single melee attack as long as they're within 10 feet of you. Actually, it boosts up any attack that damages a creature within 10 feet of you. Doesn't necessarily have to be a melee attack. So in general, it's just good to have in your arsenal. When it comes to fourth level spells, grab Fire Shield to just surround yourself in more Hellfire, and Shadow of Moil, which, despite the naming convention, it is actually described as wreathing yourself in flame-like shadows. So if you're in dim light, it brings everything within 10 feet of you to darkness, and if you're in bright light, it just turns it to dim light. And whenever any creature within 10 feet of you hits you with an attack when you have this spell active, you get to deal 2d8 necrotic damage to it. When it comes to fifth level spells, you default get Contact Other Plane, but we're also going to grab Enervation, so inky darkness reaches out to your enemies and sucks the life out of them, and you can just keep concentrating on this, keep dealing more and more damage if you want to. And half of the damage that you're dealing, you regain as hit points. We'll also grab Hold Monster, just because it's just like Hold Person, but it applies to more than just people and more monsters. And finally, we'll grab Negative Energy Flood, because it's a big necromancy spell, sending out ribbons of necrotic energy, whether that's your chains or your cape or just your black gooey stuff, whatever, dealing a bunch of necrotic damage unless the creature is an undead. If the creature is undead, they actually get 5d12 temp HP, but if a creature dies from this, they go down and then they get resurrected as a zombie at the start of their next turn, automatically attacking any creature that it's closest to right away, that you don't necessarily have control of these zombies, so be aware of that. But in general, that's how I would build Spawn. I feel like I'm missing a ton of his abilities, and frankly, you could actually swap out his species for something else, because when he's not the King of Hell, he can actually be more of a divine spawn or godly spawn, which would definitely be more of an Aasimar. But let me know what you do differently in the comments down below, and if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session.